I found out I was married at 6:17 on a Sunday morning, barefoot in my boss's private study, holding a certificate that said I had become his wife 48 hours earlier. The signature under my name looked perfect. That was the problem. I had never signed it. My phone vibrated before I could breathe. Then again, then 6 times in a row. $3 million had landed in an account I had never opened. A trust administrator congratulated me on becoming the controlling beneficiary of my boss's company. And behind me, somewhere in the hallway of that isolated Virginia estate, a door clicked shut. The night before, my boss had poured me 1 glass of wine. I remembered drinking half of it. After that, almost nothing. By the time I understood what he had done, his security team was already surrounding the house, and my name was attached to enough money, companies, and federal crimes to destroy the rest of my life. If you enjoy stories where the person being hunted gets one chance to turn the trap around, like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, would you run first, or stay long enough to collect proof? The weekend had started with a promotion. At least that was what Julian Cross called it. I had worked at Cross Meridian Group for 4 years, first as a junior operations analyst, and later as the person senior executives called when numbers did not reconcile, and nobody wanted to explain why. I was 28, overworked, underpaid for what I actually did, and stubborn enough to believe that being good at my job would eventually matter more than being good at office politics. Julian was the opposite. He was 46, polished, controlled, and famous inside the company for remembering details that made employees feel important. Your mother's surgery, your dog's name, the college your daughter wanted to attend. He had built Cross Meridian from a boutique investment firm into a sprawling network of logistics companies, commercial real estate funds, technology holdings, and private lending operations. Business magazines called him disciplined. Employees called him intimidating when he was not around. To his face, everyone called him Mr. Cross. I called him Julian only after he insisted. "You're not an intern anymore, Ava," he had told me 6 months earlier. "Stop making me feel 80. He smiled when he said it. Julian smiled often. That was one of the things I had learned to distrust. The invitation came on Thursday afternoon. He appeared beside my desk without an assistant, which was unusual enough to make me close the spreadsheet on my second monitor. "Ava." I looked up. "Do you have plans this weekend?" The safe answer was always yes. Unfortunately, I hesitated. "Nothing important." "Good." He set a slim black folder beside my keyboard. Inside was a preliminary promotion letter. "Vice President of Strategic Operations. My salary would nearly double. I read it twice." "This is real. You sound disappointed." "No, I laughed because I genuinely did not know what else to do. I wasn't expecting it. You earned it. Then came the second part. He was hosting what he called a leadership retreat at his estate in Virginia. A handful of senior people were supposedly attending. Nothing formal. Saturday discussions, dinner, Sunday morning planning, home by Sunday evening. "I want you there," he said. "You'll be working with those people soon anyway." I glanced at the promotion letter again. I thought these retreats were executive committee only. They were. Something in his tone made me look up. He gave me that calm, reassuring smile. "Consider this your first weekend in the room where decisions get made." What Julian did not know was that, for the previous 3 months, I had already been wondering exactly what kinds of decisions were being made in those rooms. It started with numbers. Numbers rarely lie by themselves. People lie around them. I had found vendor payments routed through shell companies with overlapping addresses. Loans approved to entities that seemed unrelated until I followed the ownership trees. Warehouses invoicing consulting firms paying real estate companies sending money overseas, Every individual transaction had an explanation. Together, they looked like choreography. I reported the first irregularity internally. It disappeared. I reported another. The compliance manager who received it resigned 2 weeks later. Then Julian called me into his office and congratulated me for being detail-oriented. I walked out of that meeting with my skin cold. 3 days later, I contacted a federal tip line. I expected an automated response. Instead, a woman named Special Agent Dana Keller called me 48 hours later from a number that did not identify itself. We met twice after that. Never near my office, never near my apartment. I gave her copies of documents I was legally authorized to access through my job. Nothing stolen, nothing hacked. Then we stopped. "You've given us enough to look," Dana told me. "Do not become a detective. Keep doing your job. If Cross approaches you about anything unusual, contact me first." So when Julian invited me to Virginia, I did. Dana was silent for several seconds after I finished explaining. "Did he say who else is attending?" "No." "Did you ask?" "He said senior leadership." "Do you believe him?" "No." Neither did she. But an invitation into Julian Cross's private world was an opportunity federal investigators did not get often. Dana never ordered me to go. She actually told me 3 times that I could decline. I chose not to. That decision haunted me later. It also saved me. Friday evening, a company car took me from Washington to the Blue Ridge foothills. The estate sat behind 2 electronic gates and nearly a mile of private road. It was not a house. It was a declaration: gray stone, glass walls, 3 levels cut into the hillside, a pool overlooking forest, a detached guest house, security cameras tucked beneath every roofline. The driver left after a security guard carried my suitcase inside. I immediately noticed there were no other cars. Julian met me in the foyer wearing dark trousers and an open-collar white shirt. "Where is everyone?" He seemed amused. "Coming tomorrow? You said leadership retreat?" "It is. With just me tonight? You're here early because I wanted to discuss your new position without 10 people competing for oxygen." My stomach tightened. He saw it. "Ava." His voice softened. "If this makes you uncomfortable, I'll have Martin drive you back to Washington." That was Julian's talent. He never pushed when pushing would look suspicious. He simply made retreat feel unreasonable. I smiled. "I'm fine." "Good." Dinner was almost aggressively normal. Steak, roasted vegetables. A bottle of Bordeaux, he said, had been sitting in the cellar for 11 years, waiting for an occasion worth opening. We discussed work. My promotion. A restructuring project. The possibility that I might eventually report directly to him. At 9:30, I relaxed enough to hate myself for relaxing. Julian noticed that too. He poured more wine. To finally having someone around who sees the whole board. I lifted my glass. To the promotion. I took a sip. The taste seemed normal. 5 minutes later, the room began moving. Not spinning. Moving. As if everything were sliding slowly to the left while my body stayed still. I put my glass down. Julian stopped talking. "You all right?" "I think..." My tongue felt thick. "I think the wine hit me harder than I expected. You barely drank any. I know." I stood. My knees weakened. Julian was beside me before I fell. His hand closed around my elbow. "I've got you." The words should have sounded reassuring. They did not. I remember the hallway. I remember trying to pull my phone from my pocket. I remember Julian saying, "Let me help." After that came fragments, a blue light, someone lifting my right hand. My thumb pressed against something cool. A man's voice I did not recognize. Again. Julian saying, "Use the other file." A notification tone. My own recorded voice saying my name. Then darkness. I woke at 5:42 Sunday morning. Saturday was gone. An entire day. I was in a guest bedroom wearing the same clothes except for my shoes. My mouth tasted metallic. My head felt packed with sand. I reached for my phone. It was on the nightstand. Battery at 38%. No missed calls from Donna. No messages. That made no sense. Before coming to the estate, we had established a simple check-in routine. One message Saturday morning, one Saturday evening. If I missed both, Dana would call. If I did not answer, the situation would escalate. But my phone showed 2 outgoing messages to her. Saturday, 8:13 a.m., everything normal. Meetings all day. Saturday, 7:46 p.m., staying another night. No concerns. I had not sent either message. My fear became clean, focused. I opened the hidden recording application Dana had helped me configure before the trip. The app was still installed. But the local recordings were gone. For several seconds, I thought we had lost everything. Then I remembered the cloud sync. The application automatically uploaded encrypted audio whenever it found a network. I could not access the federal server. Dana could. If the application had captured anything, she already had it. I slipped the phone into my pocket. Then I noticed my shoes. One was beside the bed. The other was under a chair. Inside the second shoe, beneath the removable insole, was a narrow silver recording pen. I had forgotten it was there. It belonged to Lena Ortiz, Julian's executive secretary. 3 weeks earlier, she had entered an empty conference room while I was copying figures from a report. Without saying hello, she placed the pen beside my notebook. "Keep that somewhere safe." I stared at her. "What is it?" "Something I wish I'd had 2 years ago." "Lena, if I tell you more, I become brave enough to do something stupid." Then she walked out. I later discovered it was a professional audio recorder with an encrypted wireless backup module. I had activated it before leaving Washington. I had assumed the battery would be dead by now. A tiny green indicator flashed when I touched it. Still running. I slid it back beneath the insole. My hands were shaking. I needed to know what Julian had done during the missing 30 hours. I left the bedroom. The estate was silent. At first I thought I should go directly outside. Then I saw Julian's study door. Open. Only 3 inches. I had never seen it open the night before. I stepped inside. The room overlooked the eastern ridge, where the first line of morning light was beginning to break behind the trees. A laptop rested on the desk. Locked. 2 phones. A stack of folders. And against the far wall, partly hidden behind a painting, a safe. It was open. I almost laughed. Julian was meticulous. Julian did not leave safes open, unless someone had been working quickly, or expected me to stay unconscious longer. I crossed the room. The first folder contained property documents. The second contained banking agreements. Then I found a white envelope. My name was typed across the front. Ava Mercer. I opened it. The first page made no sense. Commonwealth of Virginia. Certificate of marriage. I read the groom's name, Julian Cross, then the bride, Ava Elaine Mercer. My birthday. My address. My parents' names. Every detail correct. At the bottom was my signature. Perfect. Not similar. Perfect. The same digital signature stored in my phone and used on company approvals. The marriage date was Friday. The officiant was a retired judge whose name I vaguely recognized from one of Julian's charity boards. I heard myself whisper, "No." My phone buzzed. Bank transfer received, 3,000 $3,000. Before I could open it, another notification appeared. Then another. A trust company I had never heard of congratulated me for accepting appointment as beneficiary and successor controlling party of Meridian Strategic Holdings. An automated corporate filing system informed me that ownership records had changed. My inbox began filling. Transfer confirmations, board resolutions, asset schedules. One email subject made my stomach turn. "Welcome, Mrs. Cross." I backed away from the desk. That was when a voice behind me said, "I hoped you would sleep another hour." Julian stood in the doorway. He was dressed for business now. Dark suit, no tie. Behind him were two men I had seen at the outer gate. Security. Neither looked surprised to see me holding the marriage certificate. I turned. "What did you do?" Julian walked inside. "That depends how dramatic you want this conversation to be. You forged my signature. Technically, your authenticated devices executed the documents. I was drugged." His expression barely changed. "You drank wine. You drugged me. Careful." He closed the door. One guard stayed inside. The other remained in the hallway. Julian moved behind his desk. "You've always been intelligent, Ava. That's one reason I chose you." "Chose me for what?" He looked toward the certificate. "For continuity." "Continuity? My attorneys prefer the word. What word do federal prosecutors prefer?" That landed. Barely. But I saw it. A tiny tightening around his mouth. Then it disappeared. "You've been talking to someone." I said nothing. Julian nodded slowly. I wondered. He sat down. "Then you understand more than I expected? That may actually make this easier. Try me." He folded his hands. "For the past year, certain agencies have been asking questions about structures they don't understand. Shell companies, structures, bribes, consulting arrangements, tax evasion, planning, money laundering." His eyes hardened. Words are powerful when government employees choose them, and convenient when criminals avoid them. The security guard shifted. Julian did not. "I am going to explain what happens next," he said. "You are going to listen before you make the mistake of believing morality is the same thing as leverage." He pointed toward the papers. "Those companies are now legally associated with you. They're not mine. Records disagree. You forged the records. Your credentials authorized them while I was unconscious. Prove it." My heartbeat slowed. That sentence mattered. The recorder beneath my shoe was still on. Julian continued. "The marriage solved several problems. Interspousal transfers are easier to explain than transfers to an employee. Your promotion explains increased authority. Your access history establishes familiarity with the accounts. Your device authenticated the transactions." I stared at him. "You built a trail. I built clarity. You built a scapegoat." He smiled. "There's the analyst I hired. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I let my shoulders sag. I wanted him to see fear. Fear made men like Julian generous with explanations. So when investigators arrive, they find an ambitious employee who married her employer privately, received control of several entities, transferred funds, and then attempted to destroy him when the arrangement became inconvenient. I didn't transfer anything. Your accounts did. You think marriage makes me responsible for your crimes? No." For the first time, he sounded almost annoyed. "The marriage makes the rest believable." That was smarter than the absurd version I had feared. He was not depending on one forged document. He had constructed context, messages, authorizations, corporate filings, a personal relationship, motive, access, money. Enough pieces that even if half collapsed, the remaining half could bury me under years of investigation. "What do you want?" Julian opened a drawer. He placed another document on the desk. A separation agreement. Attached to it was a statement. I picked it up. The statement said I had independently initiated financial transactions without Julian's knowledge, that I had used my position to redirect funds, that our brief marriage had deteriorated after he discovered the misconduct, that I accepted sole responsibility for accounts listed in an appendix. I looked up. You want me to confess. I want you to sign, and then you cooperate through counsel. I go to prison. That depends on your attorney. You're unbelievable. No, Ava, I'm practical. He pushed a pen toward me. Sign, and your family stays out of this. My face went cold. What does my family have to do with anything? Nothing. He waited. Unless you make them relevant, there it was. The threat he had been careful not to say directly. I looked down at the agreement. The pen recorder felt suddenly heavy beneath my foot. I needed more. Did you do this to Lena? For the first time, Julian's expression shifted. Why are you asking about Lena? She gave me a warning. When? I smiled weakly. That was a mistake. I saw him calculate. So I corrected quickly. She acted terrified around you. I assumed there was a reason. Julian leaned back. Lena was useful until she confused proximity with importance. What happened to her? She resigned. She disappeared. She moved. Where? I don't manage former employees. I looked toward the guard, then back to Julian. If I sign this, you let me leave? After my lawyers review everything? No. His eyes narrowed. I'm not staying here another night. You are not negotiating. I am if you need my signature. He stared at me. I forced myself not to look away. Finally, he said, What do you want? 10 minutes. 4. A shower. Clothes. A chance to think without him staring at me. I nodded toward the guard. Julian almost laughed. You're asking for privacy? I'm asking for 10 minutes before I sign away my life. He studied me, then checked his watch. 7? He stood. Martin will wait outside your room. I picked up the agreement. Take it, Julian said. Read every word. You always do. I walked out. Martin followed. My legs felt weak, but not from the drug anymore. I counted steps. 22 from Julian's study to the guest room. Martin stopped outside. 7 minutes. I shut the door, locked it, then moved. There was no time to call Dana. If Julian had monitored my phone before, he could still be monitoring it. The windows were my only chance. The bedroom was on the second floor, but the hillside rose beneath the eastern side of the house. The drop from my window to the sloped lawn was maybe 12 feet. Enough to break an ankle. Not enough to guarantee it. I put on both shoes. The recorder stayed beneath the left insole. I shoved my phone into my waistband, wrapped a blanket around my forearms, and opened the window. Cold morning air hit my face. Below me, wet grass descended toward a tree line. I heard Martin knock. 3 minutes. I climbed onto the sill. The bedroom door handle moved. He had a key. I jumped. I landed badly. Pain shot through my right knee, but it held. Behind me, someone shouted. I ran. The forest swallowed me within 30 seconds. Then the rain started. Not a storm at first, just cold drops through leaves. By the time I reached the lower access road, it was pouring hard enough to turn the shoulders into mud. I heard an engine behind me. Black SUV. Coming fast. I climbed over a guardrail and slid down a drainage ditch. The SUV stopped above me. 2 doors opened. Ava! Martin, don't make this worse. I crawled through mud beneath a concrete culvert barely tall enough for my shoulders. Water rushed around my hands. A flashlight beam swept across the opening behind me. I kept crawling. The culvert emerged on the other side of the road beneath thick brush. I climbed out and ran downhill. My lungs burned. My knee throbbed. Branches slapped my face. I had no idea where I was going. Then I saw the headlights. A 2-lane county road. I stumbled into it. The first vehicle swerved around me. The second did not stop either. The third was a sheriff's cruiser. I stepped directly into the lane and raised both hands. The cruiser braked hard. A deputy jumped out. "Ma'am, get out of the road! I need help!" He reached me as my legs finally gave out. There are men behind me. "Are you hurt?" My boss drugged me. He forged documents. He's trying to frame me for federal crimes. The deputy looked at me exactly the way you would expect someone to look at a barefoot-sounding woman in soaked business clothes, claiming her billionaire employer had secretly married her. Except I was wearing shoes, and one of them contained the reason I knew I was not crazy. "What's your name?" "Ava Mercer." Something passed through his expression. Recognition. Very small. Then he said, "Get in the car." 20 minutes later, I was sitting beneath a blanket in the rear seat while 2 cruisers drove back through Julian's gates. The black SUV was already there. Julian stood beneath the front portico, dry, composed, almost relieved. A second deputy opened my door. "Stay here." "No, ma'am. He'll control the conversation if I'm not there. That's not your concern. It is when every document inside says I committed his crimes." The deputy hesitated, then looked at his partner. "Stay beside her." We approached the house. Julian stepped forward. Thank God. His performance was perfect. "Ava, we've been terrified. I almost admired him. Tell them what you did." He looked devastated. "I don't know what she means." The first deputy spoke. "Mr. Cross, Ms. Mercer says she was held here against her will." Julian looked toward me. "Ava, nobody held you here. You drugged me. You became ill after drinking. You forged a marriage certificate." His face changed into concern. "Not fear, concern, Ava." He turned towards the deputy. "This is what I was afraid of." "Afraid of what?" Julian exhaled. "She has been under enormous professional pressure." I laughed once. I could not help it. He continued. "We had a private relationship. It was inappropriate. I accept responsibility for that. We made an impulsive decision Friday night. There was no relationship." He looked at me sadly. "We got married. You forged it." Julian pulled out his phone. I wish that were true. He tapped the screen, then held it toward the deputies. Video played. There I was, sitting at Julian's dining table. Friday night. My face visible. A document in front of me. Julian beside me. On the video, I smiled. Then signed. I felt physically sick. The angle was wrong. The movement was wrong. But to anyone seeing it once, it looked real. "There's more," Julian said. Another clip. Me holding my phone. Approving something. Another. Me saying, "I understand." My voice. My face. My body. Fragments rearranged. Some likely recorded months earlier. Some generated. Some captured while I was barely conscious. One deputy looked at me. "Ms. Mercer? It's fake." Julian lowered the phone. "Ava, please stop. Shut up." The deputy's expression hardened. "Ma'am." "He drugged me." "Do you have evidence?" Julian answered for me. "She does not." That was when I started laughing. Not because anything was funny, because Julian had finally said exactly what I needed him to say. Everyone looked at me. I sat down on the stone step, untied my left shoe. Martin moved forward. The deputy stopped him with one arm. I removed the insole, then pulled out Lena's silver recorder. Julian's face emptied. It was the first truly honest expression I had ever seen on him. I held the recorder between two fingers. "You're right," I said. "I don't." His eyes locked on it. "I have hours. Nobody spoke." I pressed the side button. A small blue light flashed. "Encrypted continuous recording," I said. "Automatic upload whenever it finds Wi-Fi." Julian stared at me. I looked towards the deputies. "And his house has excellent Wi-Fi." The older deputy slowly smiled. Julian turned toward him. Something changed. Posture. Tone. The entire scene. The deputy reached beneath his rain jacket and pulled out a credential wallet. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." "Julian Cross," he said. "I think we can stop pretending now." Martin stepped backward. The second deputy blocked him. 2 dark vehicles appeared at the bottom of the drive. Then 3 more. Doors opened. Agents in plain clothes moved toward the house. Julian looked at me. "You planned this, not this." My voice shook. "The weekend? No. The fake marriage? No. Being drugged? Definitely no." I stood. "But I planned for the possibility that you were exactly who I thought you were." He looked toward the recorder again. I continued. Dana heard the uploads. As if summoned by her name, Special Agent Dana Keller stepped from the first vehicle. Rain darkened the shoulders of her coat. She walked directly to us. "You missed 2 check-ins," she said. "I know. The messages from your phone used language you never use. That almost made me cry." "What language? You wrote 'no concerns.' You always say nothing weird yet." Despite everything, I laughed. Dana's expression softened for half a second. Then she faced Julian. We received audio beginning Friday evening. Much of Saturday was unusable because the recorder was moved, but early this morning was extremely clear. Julian said nothing. Dana continued. "You discussed transferring ownership, manufacturing a paper trail, using Ms. Mercer's authenticated devices while she was incapacitated, and creating evidence intended to attribute financial crimes to her." Julian looked at his lawyerless surroundings as if one might magically appear. "I want counsel. You'll get counsel." Dana nodded toward 2 agents. One stepped behind Julian. Julian raised a hand. "Wait." The agent stopped. Not because Julian was in control, because Dana was. Julian looked at me. "You think this ends with me?" I said nothing. "There are people above me." "Good," Dana answered instead. "Give us their names." His jaw tightened. The agent took his wrist. That was when Julian finally lost control. "This woman received millions of dollars." Dana remained calm. "Funds transferred without her informed authorization. She owns the entities. Fraudulent ownership records. She married me." I held up the certificate. Dana looked at it, then at him. "Interesting choice. It's valid." "No," I said. My voice was suddenly steady. "You needed it to look valid." Julian turned toward me. "All that polish was gone. You were nobody before I hired you." I stared at him. Maybe that was the sentence he truly believed, not the criminal explanations, not the threats. That. He believed everyone around him existed because he had selected them, promoted them, paid them, permitted them proximity. "You're right," I said. He seemed almost startled. "I was nobody to you." The agent tightened the cuffs. "And that was your mistake. They took him away. The search lasted 16 hours. I spent most of them at a medical center. Blood tests later confirmed the presence of a sedative that had never been prescribed to me. My right knee was badly sprained but not fractured. Dana visited shortly before midnight. She carried coffee and the expression of someone who had not slept either. Lena is alive, she said. I sat up. Where? Safe. I closed my eyes. The relief hit harder than I expected. She contacted us separately 6 weeks ago. The recorder. She had several. I looked at her. You knew. Not that she gave one to you. Why didn't she tell me she was working with you? For the same reason we didn't tell her about you. Compartmentalization. Exactly. I thought about Lena walking into that conference room and placing the silver pen beside me. Something I wish I'd had 2 years ago. What happened 2 years ago? Dana was quiet. Julian pressured her into authorizing transactions she believed were routine executive transfers. When regulators began asking questions, he threatened to place responsibility on her. She started documenting everything. So I wasn't the first. No. How many? We don't know yet. That answer made the hospital room feel colder. What about the marriage certificate? Fraudulent. How did he file it? We're investigating the officiant and a county employee. The electronic record exists, but there are enough defects that nobody expects it to survive legal review. I want it gone. It will be. And the money? Frozen. Good. You don't want to keep $3 million? I stared at her. Dana smiled faintly. Checking whether you still have a sense of humor. I think it's in the culvert. That can happen. The next morning, Julian's arrest was on every major financial network. By afternoon, Cross Meridian's board had suspended 3 executives. By Tuesday, 2 had resigned. By Friday, prosecutors announced charges involving wire fraud, tax offenses, obstruction, bribery, and money laundering. The investigation expanded from 1 company to 12. Then 23. The amounts reported publicly grew so large that I stopped trying to process them. My name appeared in articles too. At first that terrified me. Then the language changed. Employee, whistleblower, cooperating witness, victim of an alleged framing attempt. The forged marriage became the detail reporters obsessed over. They called it bizarre, sensational, unprecedented. For me, it was none of those things. It was a piece of paper I could not look at without remembering a blue light, a hand around my wrist, and my own thumb being pressed against a phone while I tried to stay conscious. 3 weeks after the arrest, I returned to the office. Not to work, to collect my belongings. Cross Meridian occupied the upper floors of a glass tower overlooking the Potomac. I had spent 4 years believing those offices represented security. That morning they looked like what they had always been. Rooms, desks, carpet, nothing powerful unless people decided to obey the people inside them. Most employees avoided looking at me. A few hugged me. One woman from accounting cried. I knew something was wrong, she whispered. I wondered how many people had known something was wrong. Not enough to prove it. Enough to feel it. At my old desk was a cardboard box. Someone had already packed my notebooks, 2 coffee mugs, a framed photograph of my parents, and the ridiculous plastic cactus a coworker gave me after I complained I could kill any plant. Lena appeared while I was taping the box shut. For a moment, neither of us said anything. She looked thinner than I remembered, tired, but alive. You kept it, she said. The pen? She nodded. I slept with it in my shoe. That earned the smallest smile. I'm sorry? For what? For involving you without explaining. You also saved me. Her eyes filled. No. You saved yourself. I wouldn't have had the recording without you. You contacted the FBI before I did. We stood there surrounded by half-empty cubicles. Finally, I asked, why me? Lena looked toward Julian's office. Its door was open now. Agents had removed half the files. Because you asked questions, that's all? No, she looked back at me. Because you kept asking after you realized the answers could hurt you. I carried my box towards the elevator. Before leaving, I stopped outside Julian's office. For years, entering that room had made people straighten their backs. Now there was yellow evidence tape across a cabinet. One drawer sat open. A plant in the corner was dying because nobody had watered it. The symbols of power become ridiculous quickly when the person behind them disappears. I almost walked away. Then I saw a clear evidence sleeve on a side table. Inside was a copy of the marriage certificate. Dana stood near the window speaking with another agent. I pointed toward it. Is that needed? She finished the conversation. That copy? No. It was excluded from the evidence set after imaging. Why? Can I have it? Dana studied me. Technically, it's your personal document. Technically, it's the worst wedding souvenir in America. That made the other agent on his coffee. Dana handed it to me. I held the paper by both edges. Julian Cross, Ava Mercer. One forged relationship created to support a much larger lie. For weeks, I had imagined burning it, shredding it, throwing it into the river. Instead, I tore it once down the middle. Then again. Dana raised an eyebrow. You know, destroying that doesn't legally annul anything. I know. Another tear. I'm an analyst, remember? I walked to the trash can, dropped the pieces inside. The court can handle the legal part. 6 months later, it did. A judge entered an order declaring the marriage void from the beginning. Not dissolved, not ended. Void. Legally, it had never existed. I read that word 5 times. Void. For the first time, a legal document with my name on it felt like freedom. Julian remained in federal custody, awaiting trial. Several former associates began cooperating. The retired judge named on the certificate claimed he had signed documents without understanding how they would be used. Nobody believed him. The county employee who processed the filing accepted a plea agreement. 3 executives pleaded guilty. Others fought. The company was dismantled, sold, renamed, and divided until Cross Meridian existed mostly in old news articles and court filings. I did not go back to corporate finance, at least not the version I had known. Dana introduced me to an independent forensic accounting firm that worked with companies, regulators, and law firms investigating internal fraud. During my interview, the managing partner looked at my resume, then at me. I assume you have strong feelings about internal controls. I stared at him for half a second. Then we both laughed. I took the job. The work was harder than my old job. It was also cleaner. When numbers did not make sense, I was allowed to keep asking why. A year after the weekend in Virginia, I drove back to the Blue Ridge foothills. Not to Julian's estate. The property had been seized. I stopped at a public overlook several miles away. Autumn had turned the mountains red and gold. I stood beside the railing with a paper cup of coffee. No security cameras, no black SUVs, no locked gates. Lena had once told me that people like Julian survived because they convinced everyone around them that resistance required some extraordinary kind of courage. She was wrong about one thing. Courage was not extraordinary. Mine certainly had not felt extraordinary. It had felt like nausea. Shaking hands, a bruised knee, mud inside my sleeves. It had felt like pretending to be defeated while trying to remember whether the recorder under my shoe was still alive. It had felt like being terrified and moving anyway. My phone buzzed. For half a second, my body reacted before my mind did. Then I looked. A message from Dana. Sentencing update on Ortiz case. Call when free. Normal. Useful. Safe. I put the phone away. There was one detail about that weekend I never told reporters. While I was unconscious, Julian had used my phone to approve dozens of documents. He had searched my messages, opened my banking applications, read old emails. studied enough of my life to manufacture a version of me he believed a jury might hate. But there was one folder he never opened. It contained notes from my first meeting with Dana. Nothing classified. Nothing that would have proven I was cooperating. Just a sentence I had written afterward because I had been terrified that I was overreacting. If I'm wrong, I lose some sleep. If I'm right and stay quiet, somebody else pays for it. I still keep that sentence. Not because I think everyone should become a whistleblower, not because every suspicious boss is a criminal, and definitely not because running through a forest in a rainstorm is a reasonable career strategy. I keep it because Julian's entire system depended on one assumption: that people would choose comfort over uncertainty, that employees would ignore numbers because questioning them was awkward, that executives would sign papers because challenging him was dangerous, that secretaries would accept threats because losing a career felt worse than losing a voice, that a woman he drugged, framed, and legally attached to him would become so afraid of the evidence he manufactured that she would accept the story he wrote for her. He was almost right. Almost. The most frightening part of discovering my name on that marriage certificate was not believing Julian had control over my life. For several minutes, he actually did. He controlled the house, the guards, the documents, the accounts, the video. He even controlled the version of Saturday that existed on my phone. What he did not control was the one thing he had spent years teaching everyone around him to surrender. The choice to stop cooperating with his version of reality. The certificate said I was his wife. The bank record said I was rich. The corporate filing said I owned his companies. His edited video said I had agreed. His separation agreement said I was guilty. Every piece of paper told the same story, and every piece of it was false. That was the lesson I carried away from Virginia. Evidence matters. Records matter. Signatures matter. But when someone powerful manufactures a mountain of documentation to make you doubt what actually happened, the answer is not to surrender because the lie looks official. You preserve what you can. You find the people willing to listen. You keep moving. And sometimes, if you are lucky, the person who believed he had written your ending keeps talking long enough to record his own. I finished my coffee and watched the morning light move across the mountains. Then I turned back toward my car. A year earlier, I had left that region soaked, bruised, hunted, and legally married to a man who planned to put me in prison for his crimes. This time, nobody followed me. No gates closed behind me. No SUV appeared in the mirror. And when the road split at the bottom of the mountain, I chose the direction myself. If someone you trusted used your signature, your career, and even your identity to protect themselves, would you confront them immediately? Or pretend to cooperate until you had enough evidence to bring everything down? Share your answer in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where the truth survives long enough to fight back.